Have you ever wanted to do some clay sculpting but didn't know where to begin? I have, and so this is my very first clay figure sculpture, just to get my feet wet, or hands dirty. Hi, I'm Phil, this is Mythical Forge, welcome to my workshop. First off, why am I sculpting in clay? Well, it's because I want to experiment with characters in 3 physical dimensions. Ultimately, I need to do 3D computer sculpts in Blender so that I can 3D print them. Either 3D print body parts to make an action figure, or 3D print whole characters to paint and photograph in set pieces. So, you could argue, quite convincingly, that I should just 3D sculpt direct in Blender without all the mess of a clay sculpture. Because really, I have to sculpt twice now, once in clay and once on computer. But I simply like the idea of sculpting in clay and experimenting physically. We'll see how it goes. As for the sculpting process, I basically copied what I had seen on numerous YouTube videos. Aluminium wire armature with alfoil to bulk it out so you don't waste too much clay. I used a 3mm wire because that's what I could find on my art store. It's pretty good, nice and stiff. I may get some thinner gauges for smaller body parts later on. The problem with the alfoil for me at this stage is that I don't really know how much foil I should use, and if I use too much, then I'll reveal the foil as I try and pare down the body part. So, I think for the immediate future I'll just use solid clay, because the purpose for me with these sculpts is to freely experiment with the character. I don't want to be limited by my choice of too much packing foil. I might come back to the foil once I know what I'm doing. I also found it very hard to dig the 3mm wire into a rolled up ball of foil when I got to the head. Another reason for me not to use the foil, particularly for the head, which is small enough anyway as to not really be a waste of clay. The clay I'm using for this sculpt is DAS air hardening modelling clay, simply because that's what I found in my local art shop. And really, I have no idea about clays yet, so I thought I would give a few different ones a go. I don't think I'll be using this one again for this kind of model. It would be good for quick scenery, rocks and terrain, but not for true sculpting. It's air hardening, so it dries off after an hour or two. It takes several hours to get rock hard, but even in the time it took for this sculpt, which was about an hour or so, it had started to dry a little. It's also a bit messy. There were bits and pieces of dust and flecks of stuff on the work table which I didn't really like. It has a kind of odd smell to it as well. I'll see how other clays end up smelling, but this one just seemed a little bit odd. It worked okay, but I would prefer something with a little more tack or stick. I wasn't super happy with the blending, and as it dries, it tends to crack a little bit. As for tools, before I had started, I'd purchased a sculpting toolkit from Amazon. I basically went for the cheapest kit with the most tools, as I had no idea what tools I would need. You can see many of them laid out at the back of the desk in the background. I suspect I will probably only need to use about 6 of them, but it was cheap enough, so I really don't care. Once I've done a bit of this, I'll whittle down the tool set to what's really necessary. As you can see, I'm really only using a small spatula sort of tool, a wooden sort of rounded stick, and a knife and a roller. As far as the roller is concerned, it works okay, but it's a bit primitive. Down the track, when it comes to doing clothing, I'll probably use a little pasta maker machine, just a hand roller pasta maker, so I can get very even, flat strips of clay. And I'll also probably get a little hand extruder, the press sort of thing that you can use to extrude small pipes of or rods of clay to use as sort of piping and stuff around clothing. So I'll give those tools a shot down the track. Now, this sculpture is bad, like really bad. I don't care. It's my first one, and I just wanted to play. You got to get your feet wet somehow. The biggest mistake I made was not having any reference. I was just completely making it up because I wanted to play with the material. My best advice to future self is, have some references on display that you can constantly look at, and they need to be consistent references for a single character design. Once the basic muscle shapes are laid out, you can then pull in other references for clothing and gear if you don't have a solid character design in front of you. And basically, the reason I want to do the sculpts is to explore the design, particularly if I'm doing some sort of monster. So, for my next sculpt, I will have some references on hand of the specific person or monster. If I'm sculpting a person, I'll have some body shape references: tall, short, fat, slim, male, female, whatever. I'll also have some muscle form references for arms, legs and torso. If it's a monster, I'll search for that specific monster on Google Images, Pinterest, ArtStation or whatever. Whilst this sculpt isn't exactly going to win any awards, It does show the start of my sculpting journey, which is the purpose of this video. I hope that over time I can improve significantly, and that this video represents to me where I started, and that if others can gain any inspiration, where you too can start. You don't have to be an amazing artist to make a start, you just have to give it a go and enjoy the journey. Let this be a record of the start of my sculpting journey. Thanks for watching. I hope this gives you some inspiration to make a start on your sculpting journey.